It's Julia Renee.
And Kendall Aaliyah. Welcome back to the Know Your Power podcast.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back.
Welcome back. So Julia and I both have the flu. Why are we filming? I don't know.
We don't anymore.
Kinda.
So we both have cough drop. Like, I'm very weird about mouth noises.
As you make them.
So we both have cough drops in our mouth. We both got sick, like, literally around the same time.
Literally, you guys have, honestly, the best schedule. Because you saw us healthy-ish last week. Mm-hmm. We haven't missed an episode. So now it's like we were never gone. But in real life, we've been rotting in our beds for several days. Where we filmed, I think the fever had hit Julia that night. Hit me the next night. Mm-hmm. And we've just been out.
And it was funny because when we were filming, you remember we both came in and we were like, last night I had a little tickle in my throat. And we were just like, dee, 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 dee. And then for 3 days, like, just in bed. Guys, this flu thing that's going around is no freaking joke. I don't wish it on my worst enemy.
I kept thinking my fever was gone. And I would get excited and be like, okay, I can have like kind of a normal day today.
I didn't have that bad of a fever.
That was the worst for me, I think.
It was just the first night. And mine was more like unbearable body fatigue. Mm-hmm. Like,
my skin hurt.
Yeah.
I was like, why does my skin hurt?
I woke up one morning. I don't know if it was just because I had been face planted in my bed for 3 days. I looked at my face in the mirror and just started laughing because it was swelling. Mm-hmm. I was like, I am the ugly.
That's still kind of how I feel.
You are so ugly. Go back to bed.
That's kind of like today's the first day where I was like, and I was going to get fully ready for this podcast. And then I was like, who do I think I am? Like, I am laying down after this. So I kept it very minimal today. I'm still looking a little rough. I'm still feeling a little rough, but
Saturday
we're going to try our best.
Yeah, like that first day. I literally, my hair on my arms was like, I could see, like, it was full, everything, hair grown out everywhere. I hadn't showered in like days.
Dude, I probably smelled and looked so bad. And my poor boyfriend. Mother of pearl.
Sorry, guys.
Is that from SpongeBob or did I make that up? Okay.
Mother of pearl.
Because pearl. Okay, sorry.
It's been rough, but we're back.
But we're back. We were never gone for y'all.
I know, for y'all we weren't, but like for us, it's been a couple of days. And I still haven't trained. I haven't been back to the gym because I literally did jujitsu on Tuesday. Wednesday, I was like doing this ad for YouTube, and I was like opening a king size mattress and everything, and I was so excited about my new mattress. And I was like, I am a single woman, and I can't move this mattress right now by myself. That's not normal. Aww. And I just didn't realize that I was getting sick. Mm-hmm. And oh my God, it was so hard to do it. After that, collapsed on the couch and was out for 3 days.
Yeah, don't blame me.
And I was like, damn, that's what that was, because I was so fatigued Wednesday and it kept getting worse and worse. And I'm like, I'm always fatigued. Mm-hmm. I'm always sore.
That's the thing with us getting like body aches and stuff is we're like, I did train legs.
Yes.
And then I was like, oh, did I train legs that hard? And then I'm like, why does my upper body hurt?
I know, my upper body. And I just was like.
Yeah, I was so tense I
was like, oh, this is what it feels like. Anyways, guys, we're back but never left. We're back for us, but for you guys, we've never left. But today we're going to be talking about bodybuilding. We're actually talking about bodybuilding all week. So Wednesday's podcast will be more bodybuilding stuff. So be prepared.
That one's a fun bodybuilding one.
Yes.
This one's a serious bodybuilding
This is serious. So today we're going to be talking about peak week and show day.
The best part.
I know. Last week we talked about like the ins and outs of prep and what it looks like basically every 4-ish to 8 weeks of your prep experience and like what you can expect to feel. People are loving the series, so I'm really happy.
I was going to say, we're getting such a good response. Yeah. And also, as it comes, this isn't the last episode, correct? Okay. As we do approach like the end of this series though, if you guys have really specific questions, like maybe we covered a topic but like missed a sub point that you've been curious about, submit your questions and we could do like a after bodybuilding blueprint Q&A, like
we can
specific
do like
to it.
Q&A for all of the episodes.
Yeah.
That would be good. So yeah, email them in at knowyourpowerpodcast@gmail.com and we'll just like have a whole bodybuilding Q&A one for anything that you maybe want us to go over a little bit more. But let's start talking about peak week. How does peak week typically feel for you?
Like I'm sleepwalking, I think
Yeah.
is how I don't know if it's one of those things where it's like kind of traumatic so you block it out, but it's just like honestly not the memorable part of my prep ever. Like I feel like beginning of prep, like we went over last week, is super exciting and like adrenaline's high. By this point, you're just so tired and trying to survive and doing exactly what your plan says and being so meticulous with everything you're doing that it's not necessarily fun, but it's also not necessarily like the hardest part. You're just kind of like asleep and you're just kind of floating through that week to make it to the show day.
What's crazy about peak week for me is that you spend months going balls to the wall and then you're supposed to like relax on peak week. Like everything is changing and slowing down and you're like, wait, what? And I feel like peak week always goes by incredibly slow. Like everything else is like full speed ahead and then peak week happens and I'm like,
I do think it's
I'm
because
just
like
waiting for my next meal.
It's because like the show is so close and yet so far. Like it's, even if it's 3 days away, that's like 3 more days. Like it, like you're starting to like really get ready and go through all the things we're about to go through. But yet it's not here yet. So you can't celebrate yet and you can't be too excited yet because you're still like following protocol.
Yes, because peak week is like the most important week and that's why they call it that. I mean,
it's how you peak.
The goal is to have like the most incredible physique that you can by manipulating water, carbs, sodium, so that you can have the leanest look that you can and dry while simultaneously having your muscles full. It is such a, like, wow. Thank God that I have a coach during that time because I'm just like, just tell me what to do and I will do it.
That's the one thing I really don't think I could ever coach myself is like, I think I could figure out protocol for everything else, but peak week is so specific and every peak week I've had has been different. Is it different for you like every time? Yeah. It's like fully dependent on if my body's responding well to carbs or if I'm getting bloated from the carbs or if I'm hitting my water and yet I still look dry. Like it's dependent on so many variables.
And there's also like, this is why we talked about in the last episode of like wanting to be ready ahead of time because I also do a mock peak week before peak week. So during Hell Week, I guess, so which we called it last week, my coach will test out some things and for a couple of days and see how my body responds to like a certain amount of carbohydrates and what exact carbohydrates we're going to be using to fill me up, and then takes that information and puts it into peak week. And that's what we did this time around. And since I did 2 shows, you can just perfect it each time.
Yeah.
And
that's the importance of sticking with the same coach too.
I know, he knows your body. He or she knows your body.
Because if you switch a coach every time and you're like, well, this is what they did, and they're like, oh, that's not what we do with our athletes. Now it's like, oh, okay, I guess we'll see how I'll respond. Like, who knows?
Exactly. So for me, okay, one of the first things that changes during peak week is like training. So my cardio this past peak week was significantly decreased, and it kind of like just tapers off into nothing because you want to reduce as much inflammation as possible. And, you know, sometimes if you're doing Stairmaster, like it can be a lot on your legs. You were talking about how you kind of black out and you don't really remember things. So remember last week, I think I told you that I had an injury. We were answering a question and I couldn't remember when, what it was, why, because it was during those last like really difficult weeks of prep. I texted my mom because I was organizing something and I remembered, oh my God, my mom would know. So I texted my mom and I was like, okay, Mom, I was in pain for a certain period of time last year. I think it was prep.
I feel like we all knew.
I literally was like, what was it? Because I didn't remember because I was, you get like, I know it sounds scary, guys, but like sometimes like I will get that foggy brain.
Yeah.
And my mom was like, remember, it was your back. She was like, it was your low back. It was killing you because of the cardio.
Yeah.
Which usually doesn't happen to me. It was the first time that I ever had that much pain from the amount of cardio. And, eventually like it went away and I ended up seeing the chiropractor every week and then massage every week. Once that started happening, it got better. But yeah, so tapering off of the cardio during peak week to help reduce that inflammation and to give your body that rest is one of the first things that hopefully you can do if you're peaking properly. And then the next is training. Your training is usually decreased. And I've seen coaches do this a couple of different ways. I've seen other girls competing that are training legs like really close to the show.
Up to show day, yeah.
And I've seen people that don't really adjust their training, and then I have seen people that like don't do anything. But for me personally, the way that it decreases is kind of like the intention when you're going in. Instead of I'm going to be you don't have the strength to do it regardless.
Even if you wanted to.
It's basically like a pump workout. That's kind of what my coach calls them. So I would do, okay, maybe earlier in the week, like pumping up my glutes a little bit and only going in. It's like a really quick 30-minute workout. Because you're also very gentle during that time and you don't want to injure yourself. It's like you don't want to risk it.
Yeah, I also, during this phase, kind of related, kind of unrelated, I bruise really easily. So like, and that doesn't look great. I woke up with a bruise
one day and I didn't know where I got it from.
So I remember during training, like I'm just someone who bumps into things anyway, but especially prep brain. Like I was hitting every machine. Like I was just pinging off of all the machines. So it was just really important for me to like really take my time, be slow, be careful about everything I was doing.
Just bubble wrap her.
No, literally. I remember like all of peak week, not my last show, but the one before. I have a photo still of just ice on my legs because I was just trying to reduce all the bruising and inflammation. So if you're like me, you really got to like slow and controlled and careful workouts.
Yes. So that's kind of how all the workouts look, at least for me. And I think it is very similar for a lot of people.
I'm the same way, yeah. And then usually if my show is a Saturday, I'm usually not in the gym like Thursday, Friday at all.
Yeah.
Like usually I'm ending it like Tuesday, Wednesday.
If I can remember correctly, when I did my last show in Reno, the show was on Saturday. I think Thursday I did it was 20 minutes of steady state cardio. And then I came home, had a couple of meals and stuff, and then went later and did a full body pump. So I did a little bit of shoulders, a little bit of back, a little bit of glutes, very lightweight, not trying to overly pump anything out. And then Friday is always a complete rest day. Friday before the show on Saturday, I hate that day. And I said it on YouTube a lot because it's so boring. I get so freaking bored. I was literally coloring, walking around. I was like, well, on my Instagram, I'm like, I've answered all my DMs at this point. What do I do now?
It almost feels like how we were when we were just sick, where it's like all you can do is lay down and watch TV at a certain point.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be up on your feet or stressing out your body at all, to the point where you can't do anything for entertainment. You can't cook, you can't eat, you can't.
I was sleeping the majority of that day.
Yeah.
Very much like being sick, where the only time, there would be times where I was actually fell asleep, And there would be times where I would be like meditating, sleeping, and all I would do is just wake up, eat, drink the certain amount of water that my coach wanted me to, and then I would just like lay back down because I was that bored. And I don't like typically like to nap, so I was just so bored. But that's for like training. Now, other things that kind of are adjusted are water. Like water loading is when you're drinking like more water than you typically would have. So that's like water loading. Usually that happens more so at the beginning of peak week, maybe even a couple days before your actual peak week starts. And I usually am drinking anywhere from like a gallon, probably like more of a gallon to a gallon and a half of water leading up to that. Just that's my regular. So my coach will increase my water intake to more so like the gallon and a half, like, and then maybe even leaning towards like the 2 gallons because I already drink so much. So that when water is cut, I'm not cutting the water from half a gallon to like nothing. Yeah. It's a lot higher because one thing that I found out about my body, which is obvious, I go through water like crazy.
Yeah, I feel like your body expels water easily. Yeah. Very
easily. So like for me, drying out is pretty easy. So I have to have even more water loading than normal because I just expel it so fast.
I think I'm the opposite where like my body's so used to being dehydrated that the same approach also works for me though, where I usually pyramid my water. So I feel like this is the easiest way as someone who has never water loaded listening to explain it of like you take your water intake, you build it up until you hit like a peak of like the most water you're going to drink. And that's usually like pretty early on in your peak week. So that, well, actually, yeah, like Monday, Tuesday maybe. And then you like slowly drop it until you're not really drinking anything on show day itself. And things can get dangerous. So this is one of those things, again, follow protocol and talk to your coach. Don't do this on your own because you are intentionally dehydrating your body, but it is also temporary where you know you're going to be drinking the second you step off stage, you know?
Exactly. But you also don't want to like drink too much when you get off of stage because
you won't feel good.
you also don't want to like mess anything up because it is that finely tuned, like all of these little things. It's very meticulous. So, I mean, the goal of like water loading and then cutting the water is so that you can not have as much water like under the skin so that you can see like your muscles looking more crisp and defined. If you guys ever hear people say the phrase like they looked watery on stage, this is where that comes from because it's, you guys know what it looks like where you have, say you eat something that has a lot of salt and sugar and fat and like you look at your abs and you're like, oh my God, where did they go? Because you're holding on to a lot of water from, you know, the foods that you eat. That's a very similar look that you judges can see on stage. We talked about this too with, Francielle, where her walking to the back of the stage, they were saying her glutes were carrying a little bit of water. That's what they were talking about. Yeah. So like we want to try and avoid that, but it is such a fine tune like little thing. And the more your coach knows your body, the more they will know what works for you. One of the things that we realized in my second show that I did differently, which if you guys don't remember me talking about my second show, but when I was on stage, I was having a very, very visceral reaction to being overly dehydrated on stage. I've never felt that way before, where my chest was starting to hurt and I couldn't pinpoint. I was like, what? We did everything the same. And what had happened was my coach gave me the option. He's like, you can have like this certain amount of alcohol the night before if you want to. He's like, you don't have to. Maybe it could just help you like fall asleep because it is kind of hard to fall asleep. And I did sleep really, really well, but it dries me out even more. And since I am somebody that doesn't really have a problem drying out and expelling water easily, that made it worse to where I was even more dehydrated on stage than I was previously. So I'm not doing that ever again.
Well,
but
now you know.
Yes, so that now you know. Another thing that gets manipulated is carbs, and I feel like this is super dependent on the person, and it's kind of like a touch and go situation to where it's kind of like tapping on the gas a little bit, where having a mock peak week, this is where that could be very beneficial, because when my coach does a mock peak week the week before, he's gauging how much carbs is too much carbs for her body, because you want to hit a point of, okay, is it enough to make her muscles look full? Yes, it's perfect. Let's keep it where it is. Or no, she needs more. Her muscles aren't full enough.
Yeah.
Okay, let's give her more. Or, oh crap, that was too many carbs and she actually spilled over and her physique and her lines aren't looking as crisp while being full.
It is crazy because as someone who's like done photography for other competitors, it's really fascinating because, like, unfortunately, and this is like the truth of what happens a lot of the time, I was shooting saying shooting sounds so messed up. I was doing a photo shoot for a figure girl, and I was like backstage with her. I was in her hotel room with her and like her coach, and I was just like kind of with her all day, and she had peaked perfectly an hour before stepping on stage. And by the time she stepped on stage, I was watching her and her coach panic and like try to, do a shot of salt and like try to bring this back. And then, like try to use the restroom. We'll try to add like this carb here. And she ended up just like missing the peak literally by an hour, which sounds insane, but she was like on the Olympia level of competitors. So like you can see it at that level. And it's really crazy that like on stage, she didn't look as peaked or as good as she did an hour before. And you would think, like, as someone who's never competed, I was like, there's no way that's possible. Like, you're ready or you're not. And it's like, no, it truly can be dependent on how you manipulate carb, water, salt, all the things, and how your body responds. So they were in full panic mode.
And that's why, like, you'll also see some people that feel like they look better the next day after the show because maybe they did get more carbs. Maybe they got more water. Like, one thing that we learned from my show in Reno is that I actually needed more water than I was already having. Yeah. And that's just how it's so dependent on the person.
I feel like I'm the same way with carbs, where almost all of my shows, I look back and I'm like, I was a little flat. Like I could have carbed up more. But I think because my digestive health is so rough and all the coaches I've worked with know that, they're scared to push carbs with me. Then it can and I'm also scared. So I'm like, whatever you say. But almost every single time, and of course, like I'm not on stage, so who actually knows? But the next day, after having real carbs, my body's like really, really happy about it. So now I know is like
you could push them more just with the ones that are like better for your digestion. Yeah, and that's what's different is that everybody goes about this at a different approach. Like you've seen a lot of people do like, I guess, quote unquote dirty fill-ups where they're doing like candy or
pancakes are huge.
Pancakes and
burgers
stuff.
And fries are huge.
So when Zach had a bodybuilding team, he had, and this is just showing you the difference of competitors, he had a competitor that he was actually a construction worker, and he was like shredded to the bone super easily, super muscular, shredded to the bone very easily. And what he did for a living, you know, on top of, like, he didn't really have to do much cardio because he already got lean so fast. So he was the kind of person that needed, like, okay, you're going to IHOP that morning. Like, I remember being at one of his shows and being so jealous because my breakfast usually on show day is lean. I don't fill up until like the very last minute. And he's over here like downing pancakes and syrup. Yep. And it wasn't enough. Like he needed more. And this is where everybody's body is different. So me, on the other hand, having a very lean breakfast where it was usually like egg whites and like one whole egg and 6 ounces of coffee or something like that.
And
then,
I will say saltless egg whites were probably the worst of it all.
yeah.
I remember like no hot sauce, no salt on my eggs. I was like, oh no.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that too, about like the sodium intake too. But I kind of wanted to describe, you know, that look of spilling over and having like almost too much glycogen in the muscles, because that's what like we're trying to do is to fill them up so that they look like nice and bubbly, but they're still crisp. So you guys know when you get a pump at the gym and like maybe it's like your shoulder or something, and you can touch it, and it's like, it's hard feeling. There's a lot of blood flow into the muscle, but you also know whenever your legs get super pumped up and the lines aren't as crisp, that happens to me.
Yeah, same.
To where if my quads get too pumped, like the lines will disappear just from all of the blood that's in the muscles. So we don't want that for stage. And if you have too much carbohydrates, you pump up too much, like you start losing the lines. So if that can give you kind of like a visual, and that's something that is person to person, to where I don't pump up my quads like whatsoever when I'm on stage, because I know my body, and if I do, they ain't gonna look as good. But I need to pump up my glutes like nobody's business, because they be hiding.
I feel like one of the only things I really focus on pumping up before show day, on show day, is my delts. Because I feel like anything in my lower body, when I do get a pump, the lines go. And I just like have finally learned that, where I'm like, let's not do lunges. Like, let's not try to mess with anything. I liked how I looked this morning. Let's just maintain that, basically.
Yeah.
But everyone's different. Some people really pump up backstage. Like they bring little weights and stuff.
And we'll talk about that too, to where it's like, sometimes it's too much. It's too early. The timing is everything. Also knowing when you're trying to gauge when you're stepping on stage, and it's not always accurate. Some things always go long, and you have to adjust with that. And then sodium is something that also gets manipulated a lot. And this was something that I feel like makes a lot of sense, to where there's some people that will completely cut out sodium at like the beginning of their peak week, where all of like the hot sauces they were using, the seasonings and stuff, they'll cut them out and then add them back in later. And what I have found for me personally is that keeping how I normally and my body was used to eating it, that's what my coach was saying. He was like, let's keep. If you've been having a certain hot sauce with a certain, just don't add any more, don't have any less, just keep it exactly the same, because we already know how your body is responding to that. Your digestion's good, you're not bloating from anything, cool. Instead of cutting it out and then adding it back in and wondering, what could that possibly do?
I've had preps where I haven't touched my sodium at all, and I've kept it how I ate my entire prep. And then I've had preps where I do cut it out in the beginning of the week and reintroduce it like maybe the day before on show day. And honestly, like both have felt so similar to me that I'm like, I personally didn't see a huge benefit out of cutting it out, but also everyone's body is different. And if you are someone who retains a lot of sodium, or maybe doesn't usually eat a lot of sodium, I can see it.
I eat a lot of sodium.
Too. I'm a hot sauce on everything, girl.
I'm hot sauce and salt on it. I salt it when I cook it. I salt it when I heat it up. I salt it before tasting. Yep. All of it. Yeah, I'm a salty girl.
Yeah, same. So maybe because our body's so used to sodium, it's less impactful.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could understand if you're not like manipulating it, doing it more.
Yeah, and like the purpose of manipulating it is it's like a balance between aiding in being overly dehydrated to where you start cramping, which is what happened to me, like on stage, where it was like really scary. But you also want to not have too much salt to where now you're bloated and you're kind of like inflamed. So the way that my coach kind of went about it was we kept it the same leading up into it. And then in areas where I needed more, and if you guys watch my show day or my peak week videos, you'll see that I'm like measuring out like a 4th teaspoon or something of salt, and then I'm putting it like on my food. And the main areas that we did it were my pump up meal. So for me, my pump up meal was like salmon, and then it had like the teaspoon of salt, and I had Rice Chex, the cereal, because it was very good on my digestion, and we found that it worked really well, and it pumped me up real good, and that's just very specific, and it was kind of tailored towards my body. And so we're getting a little amount of protein and fat from the salmon, and then we're getting that extra salt in preparation for being on stage in like less than an hour, and then carbohydrates that are pretty quick carbohydrates. So that was just mine. Other people go dirty, you know, other people do extreme water cuts where they do them too quickly. You've seen people faint on stage, overuse diuretics, like, you know, this and that. And
that's why like my favorite approach coaches have done for me is that pyramid.
Oh, I love that.
Because you get to be kind of gradual where you're going from like 2 gallons to maybe a gallon and a half, 1 gallon, half a gallon. Like you're weaning off of water instead of like I have seen people do hard stops on water. And I'm like, that's not healthy.
The longer that you do that, the more risk there is, and it's the more dangerous.
Yeah.
That's why I do like kind of the pyramid as well, because it reduces that likelihood of it happening, because it is not good to be drinking that little and like literally taking sips of water for that long.
And we are lucky in the women's categories, they're not being weigh-ins, because I do think a lot of the people that do that are like classic physique competitors and open bodybuilders who need to make a weight class, which is like, I understand why there is a weight class, but also in my head, I'm like, that makes the sport even more dangerous, because now these men are like not eating and not drinking and pulling sodium in hopes of making weight.
Having to worry about meeting a weight on top of meeting a peak look. Oh, hell no. So
and you have to make the weight the night before the peak look. So it's like, okay, 9 p.m. you checked in, you made weight. Now we have 8 hours to carb up, but also make sure your digestion's good. Like, it's crazy. That seems way more stressful.
That might be where you go a little bit dirtier and you eat candy or something like that. I don't know.
Enough.
Play catch up. Okay, so now let's talk about show day. So the peak has, it's gone great. Everything has gone well. Everything has gone according to plan.
You're dehydrated, but in a good way.
Yeah, I always love waking up that morning because you get to kind of see what all of this has been for. Like, okay, why did I take this time off of training and to help reduce inflammation and maybe water and carbs and sodium manipulation? And you get to see like what your physique looks like on that day. So usually the wake up time is like super, super early. I always have a really hard time sleeping the night before just because like I'm excited, and my sleep hasn't been good either because I weigh like nothing and my body just wants to eat.
I also am someone who, and I know we'll talk about glam in a second, but my wake up time is always so early because I know I don't sleep well, and I also know I don't want to be rushing to stage. So I always opt for like a really early makeup time. And at nationals, I'm not kidding, it was at 3:30, so I had to wake up at 2:30, and I was like, why did I even go to bed? Like I should have just honestly stayed up and then went to sleep with my makeup on.
I remember that.
Yeah. I don't know what I was thinking.
That was crazy. Yeah, I mean, I woke up at 3:30 during my last show just because I couldn't sleep. Like, I'm glad that I did though, because I still ran out of time.
Crazy.
And I had time to like do my morning routine, journal, like get my mind right, and just like slowly wake up. And then, you know, if you have a coach, that's the first thing that you want to do in the morning is show him or her like what your physique is looking like, so that you can create like a game plan for the day based off of how your physique is looking that morning and what time you can anticipate going on stage. And that's kind of what we did, where I woke up in the morning, you know, I started doing my like morning routine, fixing my face, like waking up my eyes, all of that stuff, and sent my coach check-in photos, and he's like, okay, he went meal by meal.
Yeah, same.
And if you guys watch my show day video, I go through everything, like me doing my photos with my coach, him seeing what I look like, and then sending me, okay, let's do this, have this in an hour before your check-in, drink this amount of water. Oh gosh, so specific.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then you can create like a game plan going for the day depending on how you're looking. And usually with like your tan and like makeup and stuff like that, if you're getting your makeup done by the show, a lot of the times are super early in the morning. Like they have a lot of people that they need to fit in. It's a huge show with a bunch of women's categories. And sometimes I've only done makeup at a show the Heart of Texas show, and I regretted it because I am picky about my makeup.
Well, you're good at makeup. Me, as
speaking.
someone who is not, I really appreciate someone else doing my makeup.
Yeah, and it is nice because you get to kind of like hang back. There's no stress. You can kind of pack less. You don't have to worry about if it's going to match or look good on stage because they should be trained in doing stage makeup, which is super extra, so with all the lights. But yeah, a lot of the appointments are super early in the morning. I've seen girls get it done and they kind of have to just hang out and make sure they don't mess it up the rest of the day.
Yeah.
And hopefully if you get it done by somebody, they will send you with a little to-go lippy that's your lip color they picked for you. And since you're probably not going to go on stage for later, you can start using that because you probably have to eat and drink a little bit. So if they don't already give it to you, please ask for it because you're going to need it.
Ask for like a little to go.
Can I have a doggy bag with my lippy? And most of the time, some shows will have both of your tanning sessions. They're already done the night before, but most of them you do your first coat that evening. I always like to do my first coat like the closest to going to bed because I don't want to have to be like walking around. I just want to go and lay down in my bed.
So for those new competitors listening to this tan is not like a normal spray tan or like a normal like, it doesn't dry is what I'm trying to say. You stay kind of wet and like kind of sticky. And it doesn't smell good. So keep that in mind where I didn't know that my first show ever, so I got it pretty early on. And you don't wash
it off. Usually, like if you get a spray tan, you kind of like you'll leave and you'll let it dry, and then later, do your things, and you can kind of just shower. No, it's full pigment color, and you just walk around and like naked, and you just
that too. So let's talk about tanning for a second, just so like you know exactly what to expect. Different shows do it differently, but typically you're in a room with like other naked women, which again, I was like 17 when I first competed. That was really awkward. And even now it's still kind of uncomfortable for me. I'm the type, if I'm in a locker room, I'm changing in the bathroom stall.
For sure, me too.
Like I am not a take my shirt off in front of other people person.
Nope.
So it's always like a little uncomfortable, and like obviously everyone's super respectful, but like there are some people kind of like looking at each other's physiques and like,
well, because that other than check-ins, like when you're doing check-ins the day of or the day before, everyone's usually pretty covered up, so you can't really see anybody's physiques. But the tanning is really when you see everybody's physique, because usually the tanning times are done by like they'll have certain divisions going at certain times, so the girls that you're competing against will usually be there with you.
So that's fun.
Weird. It is just so weird.
It's a weird concept. And then you stand kind of like either in the same room or like in individual pods with like a fan on you to try to dry a little bit. And then that's basically it. So like you want to wear really like dark, really loose clothes to this appointment.
Nothing that is like, I don't even like wearing sweatpants because of the
I get
elastic. The elastic is too tight. It'll make dents in your skin, and you don't want to do that. I wear a full maxi dress usually that's like really oversized, and I like to wear a maxi dress because you're not wearing any underwear. Don't wear any underwear when you go for your tan because you don't want to put it back on and have these like underwear lines to potentially mess it up.
You just want to stay as naked as possible
and then
for like 12 hours.
I'm walking around in that same thing, and then when I go to bed, naked, wake up, put that same like tanning thing on, and usually second tan is in the morning.
I usually bring an extra sheet to the hotel just because I don't want to get like fined or whatever for staining their sheets.
Get a set of black sheets.
Yeah, and just sleep on top of that. That night's sleep is always so uncomfortable because you're like wet and cold.
You're wet and cold.
And you smell so bad.
And naked and afraid. Yes. You're naked, afraid, wet and cold, and you're just like starfishing it, and you're like, don't move. Tomorrow's the biggest day of your life. You look amazing, okay?
I'm gonna cry. That's so real.
It is so real.
And the second thing I want to say is usually the second coat of tan is optional. No, it's not. Like, get the second tan. Yeah. I think my first show I was going to not until I was like, it was the morning of the show. It was actual show day, and I was seeing everyone else's level of tan. Ooh. And I was like, oh, I need to go get a second appointment, like, right now. Again, you never want to stand out just in a negative or, like, in a way that's not for your physique. So if everyone else is getting the second coat, which there's a 99% chance they are, get the second coat. Yeah,
like, there's also, when you sign up for the tan with the show, sometimes the options are, like, do you want... my last show was like, do you want 2 or do you want 3 coats?
Oh, wow.
And I was like, 3? That's
3 feels like a lot.
That's like 3 coats of color. I'm like, wow. It's also dependent on your skin tone. So when I went in, based off of my skin tone, they were like, you don't need the 3rd. Don't get the 3rd. You'll look too dark. And I was like, okay, cool. So I just did my 2, and it looked great. But normally I feel like 2 is like a good...
Yeah. You just don't want to do 1. 1's usually not enough. Plus, like, when you go for that second, they'll do touch-ups on if you did mess up your tan at all, like the night before or whatever.
Oh, where are we talking about now?
We're talking about nutrition and water, I think. Did you already go over that?
No.
Okay.
I mean, yeah. So, say morning of, you've already woke up, you've done your check-in with your coach, like you kind of have a game plan. Maybe you have an early makeup appointment that you're going to get, and you're doing your second coat of tan, and then you go back to like either your hotel room or like your Airbnb, also just like still hanging out in that comfy clothes, you know, try not to mess up your hair, your makeup, your tan. Literally, you're not trying to mess up anything. At this point, it's just don't mess up anything. Don't mess up your food, your water. It's like,
you're so close.
Everything is like, just don't mess it up, you know? And usually, like, for me during this time, it's slowly starting to increase a little bit of carbs. I'm only sipping on water at this point, and it's only instructed by my coach, and it's very meticulous of how much, because we're trying to keep as dry as we can until I'm stepping on stage.
I also always, like, you can communicate with your coach. I feel really great when I don't eat in the morning before a show. Like, if I'm stepping on stage at like 10 a.m., I don't want to have like a big meal at like 8 a.m. because I know my digestive health is trash and I might risk losing a little of my definition due to bloat.
So what do you do to fill up then?
I'm like real simple, real small carb. Like, I'm like rice cakes and honey, or like rice cakes and peanut butter backstage. Like something really simple and fast and small and easy to digest, because I have had those shows where I'm doing the pancakes and the syrup and the whole thing, and I feel awful. Like, even if I still look good, I just don't feel great. I don't pose as well. I don't carry myself as well. So like sometimes we do know our bodies a little bit, where now I just work with my coach, and again, we usually do these like mock peak weeks or whatever leading into the show, so not actually telling them like, oh, by the way, on show day, like, we know this going into it to carb up the most the night before, because on show day itself, I like keeping things really small.
That's usually what we do that evening. That Friday before is like, I'll have a pretty higher carb meals, and y'all can see it on my YouTube channel exactly what I ate leading into that evening, so that we wake up and see what the look is. And then it's like lean. And then it's like really simple fill up carbs.
Yeah, the way you did like the cereal, like that would have been perfect for me. Yeah.
I think that would be a good pump up for you too.
Yeah, I love cereal.
That's what coach is. He uses that in replacement of rice cakes, because he's like, there are some people that don't react well to rice cakes, even though they are very easy. He's like, these are even easier on the tummy than rice cakes. And I was like, okay, cool. And I loved them, especially because they were so little. And I felt like I had so many of them to eat. I was like, it was the best.
It's funny.
I haven't eaten them since, which is funny, but I miss them.
Save them from show daytime.
Yeah. So I kind of wanted to go over like what it's like being backstage. Like, oh man, you want to get there early. I'm sorry, you always want to get there early. I had my pro debut. I got there late. Mm-hmm. And it was
how unlike
it wasn't really it was intentional. I intentionally got there late because I knew when I was going to be going on, and I was like, okay, they still have to go through all of these people. But when I got there, the class ahead didn't actually have a lot of people show up. So it went faster than expected. And they were like, wellness, get on. It ruined my whole brain. I was just frazzled. You can tell on stage. So never again.
Yeah. Like, why not get there early? Like, the worst that's going to happen is, like, you're laying backstage for more time. But I feel like that gives nerves time to, like, dive down anyway. Where I feel like there's no downside to being early to stage.
Yes. So set up camp and you'll see backstage, like, it's pretty messy. Everybody is laying on the floor all over the place. And what I mean by set up camp is, like, find yourself a little, like, a corner. It's most likely going to be crowded. Bring a blanket. Bring something to carry all of your stuff in, whether it's like a rolly suitcase. Just don't do something that you have to put on your shoulder.
Yeah.
I have my Angels bag, and I could put it on my shoulder if I wanted to, but I carry it like a duffel bag, like a gym bag, because you don't want to mess up your tan. And set up, make sure you come in slippers, something comfortable. You don't want to put your heels on until you start pumping up, because
why would you want to walk around?
Why would you want to walk around in the heels that long, for one?
No.
And you want to reduce as much inflammation. Literally, I've had my feet up and I had my little slippies on. I have this super cute cover that I always wear, and it's a dress.
Yeah. You need to link that black, because I need it.
Yes. It's linked in, if you guys go to our stories for this podcast, I have my show day essential. The packing list is going to be on there. Videos that you guys need to see, makeup tutorial, hair tutorial, packing Amazon list and stuff. And everyone always asks about that dress, and it's there, but it zips from top to bottom. Yeah. So I can zip it from the top to bottom and then take it off almost like a robe, but it's cute.
And robes are usually what a lot of people wear backstage. Like the dress, I'm someone who always showed up in like sweats. Like, I never really went for the full glitz, but I feel like that's just our personalities.
Yeah, mine's like, I want to wear like a super cute dress that's like camouflage.
I'm in like an oversized old vintage tee. Yeah. Like, that's me backstage, but whatever's comfy.
Yeah.
And don't let what other people are doing ruin what you're doing.
Yeah, don't look at it.
So sometimes, like, you see people who look like they might be in your class, and they're getting up and they're posing and they're stressing out and they're getting in line, and it's like, if you haven't been called yet, just keep laying there. Like, I am one to like completely meditate. I'll watch a YouTube video, I'll listen to music, I'll be like just like fully laying down, eyes closed, until it's ready to go. Like, I don't feel the need to get up and practice my posing routine 500 times, because I have been this entire prep.
Yes.
You know what you need to do. Maybe doing it once or twice before actually stepping on stage.
I only do it once they start calling us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, shoes are going on. I'm getting the glue. I'm getting the glaze and stuff like that. Other than that, like, you run the risk of tiring yourself out early, pumping up too quickly so that you don't have your desired look. But I'm like you, like I would be like, oh my God, everyone's doing it. Do I have to? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
Chill.
Because I remember my first show ever, I was definitely that person. I was posing the whole time. And I was like, someone told me to sit down.
You're so exhausted. I see people, they're pumping up when our division hasn't even been called yet. And like, that's, do what works for you. Maybe it takes you an hour to pump up your glutes. I don't know, or something, but
I shouldn't.
Exhaustion. Even at my pro shows, I'll see girls that are pumping up like
I think it's a
the
nervous
whole time,
thing.
maybe.
I feel like they don't know what to do or don't know like how to lay down.
Maybe. I'll just hang out. I'm like on my Instagram,
Exactly.
meditating, listening to music, but make sure that you bring your pump up meal if you need it, extra water for afterwards, like anything that you could potentially need, even if you need to bring like a travel scale, hair touch up kit, a mirror, makeup touch up kit, hairspray. You don't like mini versions of everything that you're going to need. Put it in that bag because you never know. Things that you wouldn't think to bring would be like an extra pair of shoes if you can, or
Extra suit if you can.
jewelry.
Yeah.
I always bring extra, like one extra thing of jewelry. We'll have some linked on the Amazon storefronts, very inexpensive, where it comes in like a set or something to where you can bring an extra and it's not like going to break the bank.
And like worst comes to worst, you're like saving another girl.
Exactly.
And now you look really good.
Yep. I've had shows where girls lose the back of their earring. I've had shows where it breaks, where it falls off on stage, like, and you don't want to like have one earring. So set yourself up for success just in case any of that happens. So now say your division is going on, they're going to call your division and they're going to most likely bring you to the area because the tanning people are going to be there backstage and they're doing something called a glaze and glue. So you could do the glue if you want to. You don't have to. And the glue is where they literally glue your suit to the front of your hoo-ha. They glue it down to the back of your booty crack. They'll glue your suit to your boobs, and it hurts.
It hurts
Afterwards, taking it off, where you're like peeling a layer of skin off, but it's literally like they super glue it down so that when you're posing, it just doesn't move. You don't have to.
I recommend it just for peace of mind, where sometimes I'll be hitting a back pose and I'm like, can the people behind me see my butt crack right now?
Especially like if maybe you rented a suit or your suit doesn't fit properly, please do it. Please do it.
Just like why risk it is how I view it.
Yes. And then they'll do a glaze, which is not necessarily adding any color to your tan, but it's adding shine. Because at this point you're like dark, you're matte, your coloring is like that flat color, and they'll add a little glaze and everything, and then you'll line up with your heels on and you'll start pumping up. So that's when you're going to want your pump up gear. This is just kind of dependent on the division and what your coach wants you to pump up. But for me, I'll always have very like minimal resistance, like the longer bands with like the handles and then the glute bands. And I'll bring like one of each for upper body.
I like bringing my own too. Some shows have stuff, but like sometimes they don't
rely on it.
Or they're being used by everyone. So then, you're stuck with like
I leave
body
mine
weight.
backstage almost every time.
Same. Actually, same.
So I just, every time I'm buying a new cheap set on Amazon and I'm like, because everything is going on and they, of course, at a certain point, you have to set them down and put them down and people are pumping up like till the very last minute to step on stage. And you'll set them down and sometimes they're like, everything's moving so quickly. I just leave them there. Leave them there.
No, I've done that.
There's been a lot of shows that have gotten my pump up gear just because I keep forgetting. But at this point, being backstage, especially if it's your first time competing, like it's very intimidating. Like it could be very scary. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's people that are going to be yelling and screaming of like, we're missing number, blah, blah, blah. Where's number 32? They were doing that at my pro show. Like these are professional athletes and they're still running around trying to chase these pros. Where's number, blah, blah, blah. And I was in line and I was like, I'm here, sir. I am here. Don't yell at me, but ask questions, especially when it comes to doing your mandatory poses and your comparisons and then coming back for your routine. If you're not sure, if you're about to walk on stage and you're like, wait, what side do I walk off on? Like you can walk on, do your routine, and then you don't want to be lost. So like, where do you go? Pay attention to like what the people ahead of you are doing and be like, oh, they're walking here, they're exiting here. Please just ask. That's what they're there for.
The officials are all really nice. And like a lot of the times they're just volunteering for shows like this. So usually they're just fans of bodybuilders or people who like live local to the area. And like the only reason they're doing all the yelling is because we are not listening. So like, definitely don't be afraid to ask. I remember like my first few shows, because they're all like a little different. I didn't know where like the glue and glaze was, and like oh, it happened to be in like the room next door to backstage or what, like whatever.
Oh,
so
wow.
like different, not stadium, what's it called? I guess like event centers have different layouts. So never be afraid to ask, or ask like, how long do you think it is until we end up lining up, or how long? Like they usually know run of show, and they usually have a prediction for you of like what time everyone's stepping on stage.
Exactly. So just don't be afraid to ask all of the questions, and like you're going to be standing in line. Eventually it's going to be your turn to walk on stage. Some of the biggest advice that I tell like all my posing girls that I coach is when you're next on stage. So say there's a girl, she's going out, she's doing her routine, or maybe you're getting ready to walk out and you can see the judges or the audience or anything. You need to be ready, meaning smile is on, shoulders are back, your chest is up, you're smiling, you're in a pose, you're not slunched over, belly hanging out. And then as soon as like you're getting ready to walk out, you're like, you know, no, they can see you. If you can see them, they can see you. So you need to be like on point right then and there. And from that moment until they can no longer see you, you hold all of that. Glutes are up, back is arched, chest is up, shoulders are back, smiling, looking at the judges, walking out, making eye contact with them. You're not there for the audience. They're not judging you. The judges are. So you look each of them in their eyeballs. If you have trouble looking people in the eye, too bad. They're the ones that are going to decide. You will literally see their faces change when you look at them. It's wild.
Because a lot of competitors don't. They look like right over their head.
They'll look like
yeah.
Yeah, because it's scary. I get it. Like I did it my first time. I didn't even smile my national show, and I didn't even know that I didn't.
Me too. Nationals was a little scary.
Zach was like, you didn't even smile. I was like, what? And he's like, look. I was like, oh crap, I didn't. He's like, you don't even look happy to be here. I was like, I was. I just like blacked out. But yeah, look at them. You can see their faces change based off of it's really hard for people to hide, you know, their face. And I remember when I walked out my first show, The Heart of Texas, I looked at every single judge, you know, and like, it's like walking into a room and acknowledging and like shaking all of their hands from stage and acknowledging all of them for being there and judging you. And I remember looking at one of the ladies who at my check-ins the night before was like, ooh, you're going to be trouble, aren't you? Aww. And I was like, I don't know what you mean by that, but thanks. I was like, probably. And I remember looking at her and making contact with her and like her face changing. And I was like, yes, I got her. I got her. She likes me.
That's funny.
So as soon as they can see you and you can see them, put that on, and you're like that until it's time to go.
And it honestly kind of helps where like you are still technically not on stage, but you're standing on stage, just like off to the side. True. And you get to watch typically the person before you go. And that kind of helps break the ice where you can like have a deep breath and be like, okay, it's go time, instead of like walking up the stairs and right out. Like usually you pause at the top of the stairs for a second and you get to like take it all in before actually like taking your first step.
Big facts. And that also goes for if you're doing first call out. So what'll happen with the comparisons is the comparisons are you're walking out with everybody usually that's in your height class and they're comparing you to all the other girls that are next to you. They might be moving you around because they're moving you around and putting you in like a placing of like, okay, usually the person that is in the middle is number one. And if you're looking at the stage from being a, what are the people in the audience? Audience. That's what they're called. If you're an audience member looking at the stage and whoever's in the middle is usually the number one spot. And to the right of the number 1 spot, remember looking at the stage, that's usually number 2 placing. Now to the left of the number 1 is number 3. So it goes like back and forth. So it'll go right, left, right, left. That's usually how it goes. So they're comparing you to all of the other girls. They'll have you do multiple of your turns and stuff, move you guys around. Now, if you are not in that center where they're calling you out and moving you around, but you're on the side, because sometimes it'll be a big class and they'll have to put you on the diagonal on the side and the back. You're still in your pose. You're still smiling because the judges can still see you. One of the biggest things that I hate is when you see everyone just drop who's on the side. No, they could still see you. Yeah. They still see you.
It's also important to this is why it's important to practice these and practice mandatories and practice holding, because it also is almost distracting, again, in a negative way. You never want to draw attention to yourself in a negative way. If every 2 seconds you're switching sides and switching poses and switching this because you are incapable of holding it, which not saying I don't do that, because sometimes you're up there for a while. But it definitely looks better if you're able to just hold it and stick with your front pose or your side pose.
That's what that part killed me. I think it was the Reno show where they did it in a weird way to where the girls, us that were standing on the edges, were there for way too long. Longer than I have ever been on the side ever in my life. My back was destroyed.
Even the show
because I did not break.
Yeah. The show I went and watched for you last year, they started with last call outs. So I think that might have been what you're thinking of, unless they did it in Reno too. But that was a long time to have top 5 standing off to the side posing. Yeah.
It was so bad. My back hurt insanely, but I kept smiling, I kept posing, and then I got off stage and I was like,
yeah.
Dying. So that's what it's like, guys, backstage, and then afterwards, it depending on the show, sometimes you'll go back to your hotel, your Airbnb, and you'll come back for finals. No matter what happens, you show up for finals.
Oh, yeah. It looks real bad when you don't.
Don't you be a freaking sore loser and not show up for finals just because you didn't get top 5 or you're not going to get... No, you show up. The judges notice when you don't.
Yeah.
They have a list. Of all of the people. Your name and your number. They know when you don't show up.
My first show ever, the girl that got 2nd place, not in my height class, in a different bikini height class, she didn't show up for 2nd place. And everyone in the room was like, oof. You just don't want to have that impression on people. No. First show especially, professional especially, where it just doesn't look good. And then the other thing I was going to say about all of this, peak week and show day itself goes by really fast in the grand scheme of things. So try to soak everything in as much as possible. Again, if you're someone who likes documenting things, take photos, take videos, try to get places early so that you're not stressed out, so that you can soak it in, so that you can
so you can take more photos.
Oops. After stepping on stage for prejudging, I was also always so quick to pack up and leave. But there is something about okay, you're fully glammed up and peaked right now. Take photos then. Even just stepping outside and doing it for 5 minutes and then getting in your car and going to your hotel. Just taking the time to do those extra things so that you can fully live in and look back on this day is important.
That's so true. And it's such a fun time. It's show day. It's the moment that you wake up, it's go time.
Yeah.
You're going back and forth, and I don't know, for me, it would be getting ready and then putting the suit on and then all of the things and then coming back and going back for finals. And they're oh my God, it's all all of this work that you have put in for months and months and months, it's over in the blink of an eye. So just appreciate it. Invite people, to come with you and experience that moment with you. Be a good sport. If you don't win, if you don't get top 5, ask the questions to the people that are in the back. They're there. If you're confused, please just ask them. They're most likely going to be yelling out the things. So listen, be early, be prepared, be over prepared, bring extra stuff. But hopefully this can help you guys. And if you have any other questions, please email us. But that's peak week and show day.
The fun part.
I can't remember what we're talking about next week, but
either. What else is there?
Yeah, I'm not sure whatever it is. We'll see you then.
I think we're talking about post show.
Oh yeah, we're talking about post show.
Sorry. Every time I laugh, I cough.
I know. Anyways, guys, thanks for battling it through us with our sniffs, our cough drops, and our hacking up a lung.
We're trying.
We love you guys so much, and you're more powerful than you think.
Bye.